Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to Ask Her, Advancing Pay Equity in Early Care and Education Systems. My name is Aubriana Kimbrough, and I am the Program Officer at the Washington Area Women's Foundation, and we are honored to have you join us today for this informative discussion. The Women's Foundation is a community-supported organization that invests in the power of women and girls of color in the Washington region. We do our work through grant making and advocacy, and we, along with our grant partners, center the voices and lived experiences of girls and women of color to influence policymakers, philanthropy, through the lens of gender and racial equity. The Women's Foundation strives to bring attention to systematic and institutional gaps within early care and education systems. Our commitment to early care and education advocacy and grant dollars from our Funders Collaborative allow us to support and uplift our community change agents, many of whom you will see on this call today, who lead efforts to create a more equitable environment for early childhood educators, faculty, children, and families. During today's conversation, we encourage you to interact with our panelists by sharing your thoughts in the chat, and feel free to ask questions using the Q&A box at the bottom of your screen. I know that many of our grantee partners and our allies are here with us today, so make sure that you use this space. We're really interested in hearing your voice, and we look forward to seeing your reactions. Lastly, if you feel inspired by today's conversation, as I know you will, we invite you to make a donation to the Women's Foundation to support programs like our Early Care and Education Initiative. Your contributions will help us to increase our efforts and to ensure fair and just compensation for those who are instrumental in shaping the future of our children. So thank you again and welcome. Thank you for joining us. And at this time, I would like to introduce our moderator for today, Dawnn Leary, Chief Program Officer at Greater Washington Community Foundation.
Thank you, Aubriana. I'm so glad to be with you all in the Zoom room with these wonderful thought leaders. So we're excited to have joining us today, Lavontte Chatmon, who's the Executive Director at Nonprofit Montgomery, Cynthia Davis, Executive Director at DC Family Child Association, and Emily Griffey, Chief Policy Officer at Voices for Virginia's Children. So each of these women bring a wealth of knowledge and expertise to the early care and education field, and their advocacy efforts are enhancing the working conditions, promoting the well-being, and fostering greater respect for educators and faculty within our community. So please, please, please give a warm welcome to our panelists this afternoon as we begin what is a very crucial and important discussion. So I will start by asking all of our panelists some questions. Questions first will be directed to everyone, and then we'll have specific questions for specific panelists. And then we'll open it up to hear from you all. So as we all know, the early care and education workforce is predominantly composed of women of color, and wage gaps within this field can be attributed to intersectional bias. To set the stage for our conversation, we really want to hear from you all and humanize the real experience of our region's educators. Can each of you provide a brief overview of the communities you serve and share any insights on how intersectional bias impacts their daily lives? I don't know, who would like to get us started?
I'll start. At Nonprofit Montgomery, we serve early care and education providers in two different ways. The first way that we serve early care and education providers is through our financial resiliency training, which really was started during COVID, in the early days of COVID, when lots of funding was finally coming through to help the early care and education provider community. And what our county, Montgomery County, was noticing is that these providers were getting so much money and it's such a large amount that they didn't have experience with managing all of this money, which, you know, is why we're here today to begin with, that they weren't getting enough money that they needed to do their work. And so we started a program to help providers manage the money, learn how to save for a rainy day, not knowing how COVID was going to advance over the next couple months, years. At that point, we didn't know what was going to happen. And then, that funding kind of slowed down. And then there was another opportunity in between. And so we started doing the programming again last year, and we're still wrapping up some of that programming this year. And the whole idea was to, again, help the providers learn how to manage their money, do accounting. Maybe they couldn't afford software because these are mostly small providers from immigrant communities, often Spanish-speaking families, French-speaking providers, and they didn't necessarily have the business acumen. So that's one side of things. On the other side of things, we have an initiative called Montgomery Moving Forward. And for about 6 years, Montgomery Moving Forward and all of the professionals in our area in Montgomery County that came together to tackle the issue of early care and education in our community really felt the need to have a coalition for providers to come and talk about the issues that they were experiencing, have an opportunity to talk with change makers in the community, people who are able to change the laws and make some real change on behalf of providers in the community. And so in those two ways, we really focused on uplifting the voices of providers and adding to their skill set.
Thank you so much.
Can you repeat the question one more time, Dawn, for me, please?
Sure, absolutely. Absolutely. So can you provide a brief overview of the communities you serve and share any insights on how intersectional bias impacts their daily lives?
Yes, I guess I'll go ahead and go. The community that I serve is a group of family childcare teachers that's located in the Washington, D.C. area. They are, we run family childcare businesses. Some of us have been in business for over 20 years, and now we have the educational requirements. We have expanded homes and child development homes, which is also known as home-based businesses. We basically, my association, DC Family Childcare Association, serves just that particular community to advocate for equity within our group, because we have several intersectional biases against us, especially with the subsidy program. The Child Development Block Grant is one of our major inequities, that child development centers receive funding for the same care, $20 and $30 more than what we receive, even though we have somewhat the same credentials, and if not more credentials than some of the other teachers that are in child development center programs. We also have several inequities also that intersection with how to run a family childcare business or even start. They have several barriers there, even with the Department of Buildings, used to be DCRA, Department of Consumer and Regulatory Affairs. They have laws or codes is what they use to stop the creation of family child development homes, which is that if you live in a multi-family dwelling, which is very ironic to me. If you live in a multi-family dwelling, you cannot have a child development home, which doesn't make sense, because who lives in child development homes is low-income families. That's really what they call quote unquote the projects, low-income families that live there. You should be able to have care where you live. There is no way a parent that lives in Southeast has to come all the way to Northwest to receive a quality program. We need those programs in our community. And we need to make sure that we're advocating for that matter of right, that families has their own choice. No one should take a choice from a parent. And those small inequities like that, they think that it doesn't measure up to anything. Now, I just found out recently that they've added another barrier for family childcare to even start a business, saying that we need to have installed a sprinkler system. That is a $20,000 to $30,000 system that we're going to end up putting in old homes. I get them saying new homes because new homes are being built, and that could be a requirement that developers are putting in the homes. But for old houses that DC mainly have, that people living here, our whole houses are cannot I don't know where they think family childcare is going to receive the funding. It's no way that a child development home or any child development facility, unless you're a center, be able to afford that without getting grant. And if especially some of the grants are already leaving our sector, but we're really advocating for the child development block grant to provide that equity piece, intersectional equity piece across the board. And we're looking for OSSI to be a stronghold on that.
Thank you so much, Cynthia, and for just highlighting the policy barriers that we have in our
Right.
that are creating barriers for these important businesses and workers in ECE. Thank you so much for raising that. Emily, please chime in.
Hi, I'm Emily Griffey. I'm at Voices for Virginia's Children, which is a statewide policy and advocacy organization based in Richmond. And so we represent the child care community, early childhood families across the state of Virginia, which is, of course, a very diverse constituency, from rural communities to suburbs to urban areas to the DC suburbs in that area. And so the constituency that we represent is probably similar to the other areas in Maryland and DC as well. But when we are going to the state legislature and talking to elected officials, those folks look very different than the workforce in early childhood education and those who are working in the spaces. They're older, white, male, they don't have children. They likely haven't been around kids or parents for most of their day. And so as we're trying to shape policies that are about early education and better opportunity for kids and families, we're talking to people who have institutional biases and intersectional biases in multiple ways. It is often very hard to break through in those settings on a topic like early care and education when it is so far removed from elected officials' day-to-day life. And that's really one of the major challenges that we face, is that the elected officials and those who represent us do not look like the folks in this sector or who are utilizing this sector.
Thank you. Such an important point. I was going to say it's simple, and yet it's not simple. But the fact that our legislators do not look like and are not familiar with this issue directly, and so they're making these decisions, right, without context and understanding and expertise of what it really takes to serve our children. Thank you all for just sort of setting the stage for this conversation. This is a question for anyone to answer and to chime in on. Often the perspectives of women and families who are most directly affected by early care and education inequities are frequently excluded from decision-making processes. In your opinion, what are the expectations of families from their providers, and how does ensuring fair compensation and closing the wage gap enable providers to meet these expectations?
I guess I can go ahead and dive in a little bit about that, since I'm a family childcare teacher. Parents really want is quality care. They want to be able to trust someone to care for their children. But far too often, legislators technically don't count a part of the workforce. It's like, because we have been on the backs of Black and brown women for so long, this labor has to be cared for. For the first time with the ARPA funds, I was able to pay myself a salary and be able to give my colleagues and my staff, be able to support them in a way. We cannot continue down this road of getting labor for free or getting low-cost labor when we already know that quality care has a cost to it. And it's not the fact that we have, like, even with our subsidy dollars, it's you're progressing, or your bronze, silver tier. That was the old way. Now it's progressing, and now it's quality, and now it's this. Quality is the floor. It is not the ceiling. So all these levels to manipulate funds and monies and things like that for labor that is also being provided for almost for free and pennies on a dollar. Parents are looking for us to be compensated in order to provide this quality. How much do we have to technically give to society? We've given government, we've given families, we've given, even for the pandemic. Look who stayed open. Family child care teachers was one of the main ones, the main programs that stayed open during the pandemic. But we are faced with saying we're essential, but we're not essential. You know, how can we technically keep going in this cycle? If we don't start valuing early care, when we know that all the brain development happens at early ages starting from birth. I had a teacher one time at a conference was like, they were feeling some kind of way and they were like, how you can have people not go through the whole process of becoming a teacher and everything like that. They don't know how to teach children. I explained to the young lady and I told her, I said, do you know getting an early ECE, early education degree allows you to teach from the womb all the way to 3rd grade? So therefore, I do believe that a 4 and 5-year-old is somewhere in that spectrum. So we should not be utilizing a workforce for labor for pennies on a dollar when you're asking for quality care. Now you're asking for degrees, which is due December of this year. If we don't have those degrees, you will not get the equity that you're seeking. You will only get it based on your degree level, your CDA level, or some people will also, because DC is the first place that's actually considering the years of experience to add that in. It's not going to replace a degree, but we're saying as far as the level of where you will fall on the scale. Hopefully that takes place with OSSI and they still consider those pieces of the puzzle that we put in place with the pay equity. But we cannot continue to provide care and quality care that you're asking for. You're asking for more, but you're paying out less. We cannot continue that in the year 2023 as if we're back in 1900s or something. Of like, we just have to get to the point that we cannot provide this work and this quality of work and so much needed work for families. Families want teachers to be well compensated and they want quality teachers. And in order to get that, you have to pay the workforce. There's no way that you can do it without it.
Thank you for that, Cynthia. Emily, Lavontte, any?
Yeah, I think Cynthia did an awesome job laying out what families expect.
Can we do some snap?
Yeah, I was about to get some amen.
Yes. And, in terms of the other spectrum of this, right, the expectations being here,
Right.
but the dollars being down here, it doesn't enable providers to be able to meet that level of quality all the time, right? Number one. And number two, when you think about any job, most people want to be satisfied on their job, right? So not only are these providers overworked, they are being asked to go above and beyond to do the most, but they're being paid essentially pennies. They're not being respected, or their craft is not being respected or valued.
Right.
And, that leads to lower job satisfaction. And then what that ultimately leads to is people exiting the workforce. And this is why we are encountering the issue of not really having a full, robust workforce, because people can't get the necessary education that they need. And even if they do, and they meet all of the highest qualifications, they're not getting paid a salary where they can take care of their own families, where they can do continuing education, where they can even afford healthcare. And so when we talk about how does ensuring fair compensation and closing the wage gap enable providers to meet the expectations, this is how they can meet the expectations: when they feel satisfied, when they can take care of their families, when they can afford healthcare for themselves. And it seems less burdensome to go above and beyond because you're getting paid what you deserve to be paid.
Yeah, thank you so much for just also raising the fact that there are the exit from the workforce as a result. I just want to ask this follow-up question, and you all, and Cynthia and Lavontte, you touched on it, but how would you say providers define fair or equitable compensation? I just think just to continue to raise raise that point and drive that home?
I guess I can go first. How I define fairness, because I'm working in the workforce, I want to be able to be gainfully employed and respected in my profession. I want someone to treat me as if I matter. I have a master's degree, but yet still I'm receiving pennies on a dollar. What profession does that? Any other profession is able to provide for their family. Do I have to always cut costs at some point or feed the children that's coming to my facility and starve my own family? When we are at a point where I can be proud of what I do. I love what I do, but am I always proud of it? No, I'm not, because I'm not compensated. I'm always leaving with a health and wellness piece that's not being taken care of, which is me. I can't give all of myself to a profession that does not give something back. When we feel respected in our profession and we feel that we're valued there, that means with my salary, according to that, and I can actually get some sleep, cut back just a little bit and relax and don't have to take on multiple jobs. I'm also a professor because my salary clearly at the business that I'm running does not provide for me. I have to have more than one job. And in that business, I'm already the accountant, I'm the cleaner. I do 10 jobs on top of that. So once I feel fairness happens, is when subsidy is equal to centers at the center directors level. And when subsidy is actually paying out a quality amount for the quality of care they're asking for. My master's degree should count for something. I worked hard to get it, and I think I should be well compensated for it.
Cynthia, you about to take us to church.
You know, I love the Jesus now.
It's about to take us to church. I mean, I just want to highlight, I heard respect, well-being, value. Those are some of the words that just rose for me. Emily, Lavontte, any thoughts you want to share?
I was going to add here, I mean, Cynthia has captured all of it and more, but one of the things in terms of equity that we're having conversation about is the tension between what early educators get and what K-12 educators get.
Right.
And is it fair to have, is equity when early childhood educators are making the same amount as K-12 educators? Even that, because it's a predominantly women-led field, is artificially deflated in terms of that pay too. So is that the ultimate goal that we want to see, the K-12 equity? You know, and then equity, as you're talking about, between the centers and the family day homes too. So I hope that, you know, we're still just trying to get to the point of where early childhood educators can be viewed in the same mindset, same pay scale as those K-12 educators. But I would like us to be even further beyond than that conversation.
Just to add a little bit more, we are talking about a parity and we are talking about equivalency. We cannot, to bring us in to care for 4 and 5 year olds, we know that a lot of us that has degrees is not going back to school to do all these, how much time it would take to even get there. We're talking about those who already have our credentials already, and we're saying have a parity or some level of equivalency, like the GED has an equivalency to the diploma. You know, we need to be equal, and that's when that fairness is going to start happening, is when we are equal to DCPS, public charter schools, and child development centers. We need to make that wheel turn round as a circle. When a spoke is missing on that wheel, that means that there's children that are going to be sacrificed. You cannot say no child left behind, but leave billions of children behind. Especially when it's low income children. Families deserve quality care, and quality care comes with that equivalency and fairness for their teachers. Their teachers have to be equivalent to DCPS and has to be equivalent to child development centers too. The whole center need to be all even across, so everybody feel valued, and give us health care that is valuable enough that I want to go. It took me years to even get health care because I didn't have enough funding. They will give me health care for my staff, but not for me. So for 2 years, I was out of healthcare. So that's a big piece also too. DCPS has a wonderful healthcare system. I wish, you know, we have a healthcare system. I'm not downing that, but I'm just saying that we want it equivalent enough that I don't have to worry and it's little out of pocket funds.
Yeah, thank you for that issue. It's so important. Lavontte, you were unmuted.
Yeah.
I'm in here.
I just wanted to thank Cynthia and Emily for really highlighting the some of the important parts. And I
Right.
really want to highlight that compensation is more than just salary and parity in the salary. And Cynthia talked about health insurance, and yes, yes, yes to that. But there's also things like retirement plans. No one wants to work forever. Everyone deserves to be able to retire after a certain
Right.
point and to feel that they have enough money to do so. And I don't think that early care and education providers around, our community can say that they would feel comfortable retiring at a certain point. Many may not even have retirement plans. How many are able to take time off? Centers run 5 days a week, but they're early in the morning to later in the afternoon. And so I think that when we talk about fairness and equality and compensation, that we're looking at the full spectrum of what compensation is beyond just
Right.
a salary.
Right.
Yeah. Well, great points. Y'all are on fire. I know I see the chat's on fire. We're getting some amen.
Yes. Yes.
That's such a great conversation so far. So this question, I'm directing this to Emily and Cynthia. Preserving and improving the quality, accessibility, and affordability of childcare is an ongoing need of the early education system. Yet, as you all know well, we often see cuts and reductions in funding or policy shifts that undermine ECE advocacy efforts. Can both of you speak about regional or federal subsidies or bills or policies that were intended to strengthen the ECE sector, but were not sustained over time? And how do these fluctuating changes impact providers' work and stability in early care and education?
You want to go, Emily, or you want me to go first?
Sure, I can go if you
Okay.
want. Yeah, okay. So a couple of things in Virginia, since with you, we're receiving the federal money based on your population size. So then our state administrators at our Department of Education are making decisions about how to use that money. Some of the things that Virginia has done is to create a cost of quality payment for our child care subsidy so that it is centered on teacher pay and rather than what the market can pay for child care. So we are very thankful for that change. We've increased our family income eligibility for child care. We're paying providers higher rates through that cost of care. Some providers higher rates through that cost of care. And allowing family to have eligibility while they're looking for work. So we put a variety of things into place so that the child care subsidy system is better in Virginia. It's better for providers and it's better for families. While that said, it is better, there are still lots of things that we can do to improve. And we are facing this sort of pending fiscal cliff when those federal dollars go away. And the looming question of will there be additional federal dollars to replace those, or whether our state will be able to kick in additional federal dollars. So the movement for childcare, and like I said, who is there in the legislature and making these decisions will depend a lot on what happens in these next few years. We have a couple of strong leaders in Virginia who are moving forward with federal legislation. Bobby Scott and Senator Kane are two of the key representatives on that. So we greatly appreciate their willingness to step out on this issue, but we need others to come along with them too.
Thank you.
Can you repeat the question for me?
Sure, absolutely. You talk to us about regional, federal subsidies, bills, or policies that were intended to strengthen the ECE sector,
Okay.
or not sustained over time?
Yes, we can start with the pay equity fund. The pay equity fund is there to stabilize the system, but it's already has a cut on it. $4.4 million was cut from the pay equity fund by the mayor, and we're hopefully we're advocating to council to Phil Middleton to restore the funds for the pay equity. Sometimes it's just really exhausting, really to get teachers so excited about something that's going to happen for them. And then if we're constantly going back to redo or to change something that we're putting in place to motivate teachers to come to a field so they can feel appreciated, then on the back end, you're coming right back 2 seconds later and retrieving the funds right out of a program that hasn't even implemented the program fully, and it's already cut. So we should not be right-sizing a program before it even is implemented out to the field. Second is the Child and Working Families Act, Child Care and Working Families Act. Senator Murray has produced a wonderful bill to support families. 150 of their median will be able to, families median will be able to afford childcare, which will open 21,000 or more slots in DC and probably in other states as well. And if we support this bill, this is going to open up a whole lot of avenues for family childcare. This is the first time family childcare was even written into law. So, we like ecstatic. We're so ecstatic in DC for that being into the bill that we're doing on July 29th at 9 a.m. We're doing a walk for family childcare. We're walking for fairness and family childcare awareness. So we're walking from the Stadium Armory and it's so funny, we end up getting Freedom Plaza right in front of the Wilson Building where the council members meet. But we're just talking about the fairness and pay, and also in resources. People don't really speak of resources because pay comes with resources. I'm able to buy books for my students if I have funds to do so. So that pay equity piece is most definitely a big one. Other states doesn't have it. DC is the first to have that. So we want other states to follow suit to make sure that all teachers are being, especially based on your income. We're not saying put $3 billion into someone's salary, just one person. We're saying put it into the funding so that all teachers can be compensated and treated fairness and be able to take care of themselves. Because that health and wellness piece is a lot of mental health that's really I usually take some of my colleagues out for lunch because they just be feeling sad. They're not around adults. They just always with children. Some of them because we're an aging community and a lot of us are over 50 and we have our program coordinator is like in her 30s. We were so excited. We didn't know what to do. We're like, woo, we got somebody in their 30s. But it's the point that we have to produce this field so that people want to come back and want to be gainfully employed in it. And in order to do that, we have to provide that piece of equity, resources. We just have to make it a well-rounded system so that people will want to be there. Men are usually not in this field because men don't deal with the drama of having low pay. They are usually administratively, so they don't be in the service field. I see a couple guys that does want to work in the service field, and I'm so proud of them to be there. We have like about 20 guys in the men in ECE that we're supporting in DC. That is really doing great work, having true conversations about how they can support more men into the field. So unless we're being compensated equally across the board and being able to provide resources and have our health and wellness taken care of, that's a true system to me.
Yeah, and thank you for not letting us lose the health and well-being side of this conversation, Cynthia, because capitalism talks about that we are a commodity and that we are not. And I appreciate when we're talking about these workers, you're keeping that for our audience and for us front and center about that they are women, they are people, they are caregivers, they're whole individuals. And that's such an important point as we're talking about this, and you all have touched on that in your comments. So the next question is for Lavontte and Emily. When considering pay equity advocacy, and we sort of have touched on this a little bit too. We know this work has been a long haul social movement ignited by educators, advocates, and allies. What are some crucial lessons that have been learned during this movement? And how can we continue to cultivate advocates? Especially, I think, as Cynthia noted, sometimes it's one step forward and two steps back, and folks can get really discouraged when we're talking about advocating around these important issues. Lavontte, you want to kick us off?
Sure, I'll kick us off. I'll say with Nonprofit Montgomery, through our initiative Montgomery Moving Forward, advocacy is a huge thing that we undertake. And some of the lessons that we've learned is that there needs to be a better, broader understanding of the value of early care and education. We need to be considering intersectionality and inclusion when we talk about advocacy and who's at the table advocating for this community, and the importance of building coalitions and partnerships and elevating provider voices. And I'd like to say thank you to the Washington Area Women's Foundation for their funding for our work in Montgomery. For Montgomery Moving Forward, because some of the work that we're doing is through our coalition of providers, and also, helping to help these providers have their own voice and advocate on behalf of themselves. I think we talked about it earlier. There are a bunch of people making laws and making rules and writing bills and all of these things that don't have the experience, don't necessarily have the same level of knowledge, the same care and understanding, and they are not able to think about lawmaking in regards to making things more equitable for this community in a way that's pragmatic and realistic, right? And truly meets the needs. And the more providers that we have at the table being a part of those decisions going into the bill making, then the better off the community will be. And, I also want to recognize and highlight something that Cynthia said. It is tiring, and providers are working, long days sometimes, and their weeks are long. And so keeping that in mind, right? How do we make it so that providers can come to the table and have a seat and use their voice for advocacy? And so some of the work that we're doing is helping people to understand how to reach out to the community and utilize providers in that way, and helping providers understand how they can use their voice, within the constraints of their field. And I think how we continue to cultivate advocates for this cause is by continuing to lift up the leaders, right? Not necessarily the leaders of the provider community, not speaking on their behalf, not, doing something for them and then bringing it back to them to give feedback, but allowing them to guide the work and tell people what they need, essentially.
Thank you. Emily.
Yeah, and I will say in Virginia, we are not doing it well right now in terms of learning these lessons about shifting the power and making sure that the providers' voices are heard. There is a lot of advocacy that is, created in spaces that are not friendly to providers or to parents. And I think it is incumbent on other advocates to have to say, we have to have the provider voices here. They have to make space at this table that you've created in these other settings so that providers can have a seat here. And it is hard, where we are working an uphill battle to get there in Virginia. And it is taking a mindset shift to think about, where do folks who are most directly impacted, who have real skin in the game, get to weigh in on these decisions. And I will say one tactic I think that is helpful, right? Because sometimes you need the outside validator, the outside person to say, give a seat at this table, is that we do have a robust evaluation effort in Virginia through UVA, the University of Virginia, that's looking at some of the experiences with pay equity and compensation and workforce retention that can present that neutral outside validator standpoint of, here's what we're saying from the expert group about what needs to happen in this space to make sure that you're paying attention to pay equity and compensation. And so I think that is a valuable partnership to have, but it really is going to take so many other folks to say, we have to change our mindset. We can't make these decisions without the folks who are most directly impacted anymore.
Thanks, Emily, for just sharing in terms of vulnerability, right? Because just sharing that everyone's at a different point in this process. And I think that's just an important point to lift up. And I know time is fast and y'all are just so fabulous. And so we're going to try to get through a few more questions. And then I know the audience is clamoring to get in. So I'm trying to get through some of these questions. So maybe for one of the panelists to answer, maybe you don't need all of the panelists to weigh in on, but do you anticipate a potential advocacy opportunity for achieving pay equity in your region? If yes, what steps must we take to capitalize on this opportunity? So maybe one of the panelists can, Cynthia, you want to chime in on this one?
Can you repeat the question for a minute? I'm sorry, I was reading the chat too. It's really like live. I'm loving the chat.
But do you anticipate a potential advocacy opportunity for achieving pay equity in your region?
Okay.
And if yes, what steps must we take to capitalize on this opportunity?
I guess DC is already really has done the work to really get the pay equity fund up and going. We have to provide those who's making an income higher than others can easily contribute. That is one of the ways the pay equity fund is also being funded. They have other taxes that they are taxing within the city to fund the pay equity fund. We have to make sure that if we want this whole system to run and to run equally, we have to start not at the bottom. We're already there. They acting like this is something new. The pandemic just exposed what was actually happening. We do not need to do any more pilot programs. We do not need to do any more things around early childcare just to test to see what's happening. We already know what's happening. The brown and Black women are being paid unequally and for a labor that is equivalent to a DC public school teacher or charter school teacher. We need to make the pay median across the board for everyone. We need to make sure that we're funding like they do in other states. Like I think in San Francisco, they have, if you're developing a building and you're trying to do a building or something, they have taxes that if you don't want a child development center or a child development family child care home there, you have to pay in extra taxes for that whole reason. I think it's San Francisco, if I'm not mistaken. So if we're taxing and funding ECE like we're doing everything else, then we won't have an equal, we will have an equal system where people are being valued in their profession. We should have teachers dumping in to public schools. We're not the only ones suffering for staff shortages. DC public schools is suffering with staff shortages because they already know a lot of people are unvalued in other fields. They don't want to count the elderly. The elderly filled in a lot of positions that was around in service areas. They helped out in schools. They did a lot of volunteering and things like that. And then you have a lot of mothers who stepped away from the field. We are losing billions of dollars for women not being in the workforce. So don't we think that maybe funding women contribute to economies and help and assist in economies? We cannot constantly devalue women in the workforce. I love women who wants to stay home and work and provide for their families. I respect that, but that's your choice. Right? So should I not have a choice to work outside of that? Why I can't just be a mom and still work and be gainfully employed and get a salary just as well? If that's what I choose to do, it's all about the choice. And we have too many men making choices for women and about our bodies. We cannot have that to continue. We are women, we are strong, we are valuable, and we make and break economies. We've shown that. So if you don't value us, then we can stay in this phase all you want, or we can start to value women and start to value our profession and what we do. We're bringing up the brains that's coming into the future. These little brains that we're developing, it's just, we just can't devalue that. We have to also, our future has to hold someone. All of these people are going to be aging out. Remember, they're aging in Congress, right? And then our senator, we need young minds to come in and give us a fresh start and start this world in a better place. We just have to value our society in a way that we're valuing our education and how we teach our children.
Cynthia Davis for president. I was like, I was carrying the sign. Cynthia Davis, president.
I'll take that.
We are getting close to the end of our discussion. You all have just ignited fire and imparted wisdom to all of us. But just want to give the opportunity before we open up the question and answer for all of you. If there's anything, points you wanted to drive home or highlight for our audience, I just wanted to open the floor for you all now. Cynthia, do you want to kick us off?
Just making sure that we minimize teacher burnout. I did read that in the chat a little bit, but we have to most definitely value teachers enough. I remember when I came up and I had a Mr. Sims and a Miss Scott who made me want to teach. You know, she was like a second mom. He was like a second dad or a third dad. The whole community actually chipped in to make sure I am the person who I am today. If we don't start having community input and proximity expert, what I mean is that is you as the teacher. If you don't start getting the teacher at the table and you start making laws regarding what we should be doing and what we cannot do, that means that you're missing out on a valuable learning opportunity to include a group that is going to value the system and make it better. We do long hours. We willing to put in the work. We never said that we never wanted to do the work. We're doing the work. So we're willing to give you what you're asking for. The quality that you're seeking it's always been there. It's never been lost. You know, I'm no one's babysitter, not with a master's degree. So you cannot equate me to a young lady and that's a profession as well, but you can't equate me to a young lady who comes over to let a parent go on date night. And so that a parent can have a good day of relaxation with her and her husband, or even her with her girlfriends, or whatever that happens to be. But we need to start valuing our field and just making sure that we minimize teacher burnout by providing health insurance, a time off that is needed, especially during prenatal care and after a mom has a child, home visiting, you know, people to be able to visit new moms, to be able to give them care. We just have to value women and what we do to add to this economy and to our communities.
Thank you, Cynthia. Lavontte?
I really wanted to echo and piggyback on a comment that Cynthia made at the last question, and just state that ECE field feeds the economy. And if we focus on that, we can understand the value of ECE providers. And I think that there is a lot of work being done, a lot of great work, and there are a lot of great allies. And I think there is more work still to be done. And we can do a better job of uplifting the voices of providers and allowing them to lead this work and, you know, really give this community what they deserve and what they're owed. I agree that quality care exists, and now we just need to give them back the quality that we're asking.
Thank you. Emily?
I mean, I think the big thing they're talking about here is shaping awareness, making sure that folks are very upfront with advocacy for early childhood education, with advocacy for providers as well. And so I think one opportunity that we have in Virginia right now is our state legislative election for all 140 members of our General Assembly. We do off-cycle years, so this year is us, and all of our members are up. And we have very closely divided House and Senate. And so I think it's a really important opportunity for folks from all sorts of backgrounds to talk about early childhood education with the folks that they're who are running, who making sure that they're reflecting the needs of providers and parents in their community. And so, you know, we work with a variety of partners around the state, from the Promise Partnership, from the early childhood, the NACI, the early childhood associations, our League of Women Voters, our Campaign for a Family Friendly Economy, where they're looking at issues like other issues around healthcare and paid leave. And so that we're working together to help shape the conversation that our lawmakers may have while they're on the campaign trail, and that voters are asking their candidates about. And so I think making sure that everyone has access to that information, that they see as a parent what they pay their provider matters, the quality that they get, what the relationships that they have, that early childhood educators themselves are able to say, this is how I benefit from when you represent me. All of those conversations, I hope, will be a part of our narrative so that we can have more people come into Richmond and representing us at the Capitol who have those interests in mind.
Thank you so much. Thank you all again, just so for vulnerability, for just openness and inspiration in what you have shared with us. And so now we want to open up to the audience. I know you all have been clamoring. The chat has been lit.
Yes.
Just saying amen, agreed, and just sharing. So if you have a question for our panelists, Aubriana is going to kind of assist me with sort of navigating question and answer feature in Zoom. But if you have a question for our panelists, we just want to open the question and answer feature, and please share your question, and Aubriana is going to help me navigate that. I know we have one question there.
Yeah. So I'll read the first question. And before I begin, I just want to say, wow, there is no way that we can do this conversation without feeling the fire and just the inspiration to support ECE. And I am truly honored to have been a part of this conversation. So the first question in the chat, I know this webinar is about pay equity, but I'm curious, how can we create political opportunity around universal childcare overall? Child are cost the rate of tuition. Childcare costs the rate of tuition, and it's becoming more unaffordable overall for working class. So I think this question is around how can we create universal childcare overall?
I guess I can go in and then I'll let the ladies chime in too. How we can do that is, one, for you to tell your story. Advocacy is only about you. You are the parent who is telling us what you need. I'm only a voice. I can't do it alone. Women need to unite, like we did in the 60s when Nixon vetoed the child care bill, which was on my birthday, ironic. And now I'm here to say, you know, we need to most definitely unite and start walking up to Congress and uniting in the thousands like they did. Get together and start putting our knees on the floor to make sure it's on every tongue in the Senate and the legislative, whatever it is. Everybody need to be talking about on the news. We just need to be uniting and fighting for what we believe in and what is right. Child care for all families should not, that's what the Child Care and Working Families Act. We need to be talking about it. We need to be walking about it, to put it on the radio. That is the only thing that's going to make it 7% of parents' income to be able to afford it for every parent, whether you make $300,000 or whether you make $20 an hour or $15 an hour or $10 an hour. You will be able to afford quality care. Quality is not the ceiling, it is the floor. When we start funding, it is so much money that's put into the child care and working families. If they can get it passed, if we get the billions of dollars that we need, every family will be able to afford it. And every child care teacher will be able to be gainfully employed, have the insurance that we need if it's funded correctly.
Thank you, Cynthia. Emily, Lavontte, any other thoughts around universal? Yes.
The thing that I would add here is like making sure that our concept of universal is inclusive of all types of settings.
Right.
Like to make sure that we're not talking about a universal preschool that doesn't include a home-based provider in that concept. You know, making sure that we're including, you know, the nonprofit childcares, Head Starts, all of our full breadth of our system. We all need to be in this together. And so I think oftentimes when people use words like universal preschool, it doesn't come up with that whole comprehensive approach.
Mhm.
And so I think you need to envision that it is a comprehensive mixed delivery system of early education where all of these providers can benefit.
Mhm.
Another thing I will add, we're talking about women rising up and creating this movement, but a lot of our kids have dads, a lot of kids have dads.
Oh, yes.
And so it would be great to have some men also advocating for childcare and joining in the fight too.
Thank you so much. Lavontte, I want to give you I know we're about to
Sure.
end, but
Yeah, I'll make it quick. I'll just say that echoing Cynthia and Emily, everything they said, triple yes. And one of the things that we did in Montgomery County through our Montgomery Moving Forward initiative is created the Children's Opportunity Alliance, which is an entity to really kind of have everyone on the same page that provides care to, age from birth up to elementary school, right? And we're talking about the home-based providers, the center providers, the nonprofits, just like Emily said, so that we're united. I think we need to start there first because, I think we mentioned it earlier, there is some tension between the different types of early care and education providers. Once we're all on the same page and we are advocating for the same thing, the closer we can get to universal childcare.
thank you. I don't want this to end. We are at time. I'm looking at the clock and I'm like, dang it. I really wish we had more time. The audience join me in just welcoming and thanking Emily and Lavontte and President Cynthia Davis. You see how I threw that in there, Cynthia? I'm telling you, for just their graciousness and wisdom in this conversation. So before we end, I want to remind everyone of just how critically important it is to support organizations like that are represented on this call, as well as the Washington Area Women's Foundation. Since 2021, the Women's Foundation has awarded a little over $1 million in advocacy, grassroots organizing, partnerships, and coalition models through its Early Care and Education Funders Collaborative. Your support today will collectively accelerate the Women's Foundation's efforts to continue enhancing the working conditions, well-being, and respect of those working in early care and education field. Thank you, everyone, for joining us, and stay tuned for next month, where the Women's Foundation will host their first one-on-one conversation with their new president and CEO, yay, Dr. Tamara Wilds-Lawson. Thank you all so much. Have a wonderful day and be well.
Thank you so much for having me.